Here are the 10 worst gaming traits that just need to die. With the rise of the internet and online gaming in the early 2000s, local multiplayer has practically fallen off the face of the planet. Don't get me wrong, there are still some awesome games with local multiplayer out there, like Overcooked or It Takes Two, but these are few and far between. And games of this caliber and with local multiplayer, it's like finding a needle in a haystack. Local co-op has also been replaced with online co-op, rather than it being an addition, and that's if the game is co-op at all, which is another rarity. What really takes the cake though is when games that have historically had local multiplayer, like Halo, have gotten rid of it altogether. We used to play 4-player split screen on 15-inch CRTs, but now with 80-inch 4K TVs, we can't even enjoy a good old local co-op session on our favourite shooters anymore. I guess COD still has split screen, they just reduced it to 2 players. Ugh. It's 2023, damn it. I cannot believe games still exist with unskippable cutscenes. Thankfully, this is a slowly dying trend, but these games are still out there. I really don't know why any developer would think it's a good idea to have an unskippable cutscene. Sure, it may seem a bit daft to skip a cutscene on your first playthrough, but having to sit through long cutscenes on your second or third playthrough? Come on. Even if it's your first time playing and you just don't care about the story, I feel like that should be up to the player to decide whether they want to skip or not. It's not like they're skipping gameplay.
What has become of this city? Oh, you don't want to skip this, dude. This is sweet.
Speaking of cutscenes though, imagine not being able to pause it. You pretty much couldn't pause any cutscene back in the day, which was wild. I remember playing Metal Gear Solid 2 and 3 with no ability to pause. These are games with like half-an-hour cutscenes. Someone's at the door, just let me pause, damn it. Again, the inability to pause cutscenes is slowly fading out nowadays, but not fast enough. I'm looking at you, Hogwarts Legacy. Escort missions are by far the worst type of mission in gaming. Having to slowly walk to your destination as your companion trottles along like a snail is excruciating. The only time I'm ever not bored out of my mind by them is when the dialogue between the two characters is interesting enough in a game that I'm really hooked on story-wise, or if the NPC is following you at your pace and isn't able to be spotted by any enemies. It's so much worse when the NPC is walking all slow-like for the drama. Ooh, so tense, talking about how we're going to take down the bad guys. Hush those chops and get running, damn it. The best part is when the NPC is jogging at a pace that's faster than your walking speed but slower than your running speed. It's actually bonkers that there are single player games out there that require you to be online in order to play. The supposedly anti-piracy tactic is meant to protect the game from pirates, despite the fact that the only people it actually impacts are those that have bought the game. Yeah, that's basically it, just online only single player games can just do one, honestly. I absolutely love when a game changes in multiple complex ways as you increase the difficulty. For example, in The Last of Us, as you increase the difficulty, supplies get more and more scarce, listening mode is disabled, items no longer flash on screen, powerful melee weapons appear less often, the HUD is disabled, and enemies do more damage, have more health, and are much smarter, making it a lot harder for you to sneak around undetected. This means that choosing a harder difficulty forces you to adapt your playstyle in far more creative ways, like utilising more efficient distraction methods and being much more conservative with your gunfights since ammo is much harder to come by. It also just makes infected encounters way more terrifying when you know how easily they can kill you. However, many games just go, you want a harder game? Okay, enemies have more health, bye. I mean, enemy health is one part of it, yeah, but like, if that's all there is, then gee whiz, that's not exactly exciting. All it does is just make the game longer since you have to spend more time unloading bullets into enemies to kill them. I can't make a video about awful gaming practices without including microtransactions. Now, I don't think there's much inherently wrong with microtransactions, it's more just how they're used. Firstly, I think all microtransactions should 100% be entirely cosmetic. That just goes without saying. Any in-game purchase that affects gameplay in any way is just a recipe for disaster and unfairness. But even microtransactions that are purely cosmetic have their issues. They're often shoved right in your face from the get-go before you've even played anything, and depending on the game, it feels more like you're going through cable TV than an actual video game. What really sucks though is how microtransactions worsen the base game, since cosmetics that are too good looking often get chucked into the store rather than being added into the main game, or day one DLC that absolutely could have just been part of the game on release. Item degradation is a double-edged sword, a sword that you have to constantly repair. In a game where resources are scarce, conflict should be chosen carefully, and sneaking is your best friend, item degradation adds that extra nice layer of tension. But in games where you spend 90% of the time hacking and slashing through bad guys and there's more resources than you know what to do with, all item degradation does is add pointless time spent repairing weapons with the bajillion pieces of scrap you have on you, or you just switch to another equally powerful weapon of the 7,000 you have on you. It's just a boring waste of time that doesn't really require much thought. Similar to item degradation, having an item inventory is a good way of adding extra tension to a horror survival game, where you have to pick carefully what you'll take with you as you plan your journey ahead. These typically have pretty low inventory limits for that very reason. It's supposed to make you think and choose carefully. However, when an RPG gives a random arbitrary weight limit of 100 kilos, I'm just like, why? I'm already carrying 158 Evergarden flowers, but 159 is too much. All it does is make me dismantle stuff, put it in a chest, or just sell it. These are limits that are usually high enough that they only get reached in the middle of the game, so it's not even like I'm spending my time thinking carefully about what to take. It's pointless. It's just extra time I spend having to dismantle and sell stuff. And because the limit is so high, I don't even need to worry about selling something I might need because I have like 500 of the stuff anyway. So just have an unlimited weight limit, it's so much better. I have mixed feelings about QuickTime events. I don't think I hate them quite as much as most people do. I mean, I know I'm just pressing some buttons, it's not the most exciting thing in the world.
Why did he tackle it?
But they're always during a point in the story that's developing, so I don't feel like things have grinded to a halt like with Escort missions or holding forward on the analog stick as I run across an empty field. My main problem with QuickTime events though is what they replace. More often than not, a QuickTime event occurs during some boss battle or chase scene where instead of being able to chase someone down as per the game's usual mechanics, it's been trimmed right down to pressing a couple of buttons as they flash on screen. With boss fights, usually it's a QuickTime event after you've fought the boss normally, just to finish it off or something. But the worst culprits are when an entire fight has been replaced with a QuickTime event, like the infamous ending of Dying Light. Even if it's not replacing a boss battle though, it's usually just a cutscene with some added button presses, which I honestly find worse than just having a cutscene by itself. With a cutscene I can sit back a bit, take in the visuals, engage in the story and get ready for whatever comes next. But with a QuickTime event, I'm usually just on edge, ready for the next button press, completely missing whatever's going on the screen because I'm too busy focusing on that flashing A button I gotta mash.
Help! Please! Someone! I'm going to die!
The QuickTime events I despise the most though are ones that do the most menial of tasks. Having to mash X over and over again just to open a vent is painful, emotionally and physically. There is nothing fun about that whatsoever. Just have a simple button press and boom, hey presto, the chest is open. That's all you need. For some reason, every game now just has to be open world. You need to be super immersed in a game and an open world is apparently the only way to do that. Alright, it's not every game, but it's definitely a trend. Now don't get me wrong, I don't dislike open worlds, in fact I'm pretty indifferent to them. It doesn't really impact my enjoyment of a game because what matters far more is what's in the world. The problem is when an open world is massive for the sake of being massive, and because they're so big it's hard to fill it with interesting things, so it's just big and empty. How exciting!